Hey guys, Merry Holidays and Happy Christmas. Anyway, I wanted to do a Christmas themed game today, but I couldn't really think of what to review. Wait a second. What's that? Looks like someone left a gift. Well, let's see what's inside. Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday. Well, I think that's just vague enough to be a themed review. Okay, let's do it. So, Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday. The title screen is happy enough, but then it gets a little spooky. The opening cutscene shows Porky in bed looking over some holiday brochures before drifting off to sleep. The visuals are actually pretty impressive for Super Nintendo. The game starts you off immediately outside of Porky's house with very creepy music playing. I have to point out Porky's idle animations. He makes the most ridiculous movements and sounds. Half of the time he looks really pissed off. You know, in most games you need to wait a while until your character starts his idle animations, but in this one, it takes less than a second. Wow. So anyway, you just head off to the right towards the Haunted Woods. Ugh. Oh god, look at those trees. Maybe this should have been a Halloween review. So yeah, the game is your basic platformer. There isn't any button to run faster, Porky just walks at a casual pace. You can get this throwing item occasionally, but you're hardly ever going to run into it. You mostly just have to rely on your jumping. The first level is pretty basic, avoiding bats, wrecking balls, spikes, and leprechauns. Yeah, this might seem really out of place to a lot of people, but the leprechauns are actually from an old Looney Tunes episode called Wearing of the Grin, where Porky gets caught in a storm in Ireland and has to spend the night at a cat... Well, no, it still really doesn't make much sense that they're here, but Porky is supposed to be having a nightmare, so whatever. One thing I find really amusing is what happens when you lose a life. I mean, think of what sounds a character might make when they die in another game. In Super Mario 64, Mario lets out a tired sigh. In Metal Slug, your character screams in pain. And in Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday, he just goes meh and evaporates. I'm not sure why, but I find that really funny. So anyway, like I said, the first level is pretty easy. You swing across things, avoid hazards, your basic stuff. Although your character looks like he has this big annoying hitbox, it's actually pretty fair. In fact, you can actually bounce off of enemies from the side if you do it just right. Okay, here's these platforms. When you stand on them, Daffy Duck comes out and scares you, making you leap way up into the sky. Pretty funny. There's also some areas that have you climbing up or down this huge tree that rotates in 3D motion. It was always really cool to see stuff like this on the Super Nintendo back in the day. My only complaint is that sometimes you're not exactly sure where you're supposed to go. Yes, even with the arrows. But after a short while, you should find your way to the boss, a spooky ghost. You just gotta wait for him to take his top hat off, and then jump on his head. Easy stuff. The next level is Dry Gulch Town. It's pretty much just a ghost town. Enemies include prisoners carrying their own cages, sharp grass, and trains. The goal here is pretty simple, just walk to the right. Although you can also go down this well or up in the water tower to find some extra stuff. I'm not exactly sure what the cupcakes do, to be honest. Sometimes they give you health, I think, but the hearts are more reliable, and the 1-ups are always good. So anyway, just keep walking right until you come up to a hotel. Each floor leads you to another random door in the building. Just avoid the dogs and the moose heads that spit bullets, and you should make it to the exit no problem. This level's boss is Yosemite Sam, and probably the most original boss in the game. Instead of attacking him straight on, you need to wait for him to shoot at you. Then you jump on this seesaw so that the pan will fly up and deflect the bullets. Sam's looking a little bigger than usual. Ah, okay, I get it. So yeah, just time your jumps right and you should beat him without too much trouble. Next up, we have the Atlantis Level. The first part, you just have to ride on this little makeshift boat while avoiding fish, birds, or falling into the ocean. Which sorta doesn't make sense because at the end of it, you just end up going underwater anyway. So, yeah, it's a water level, so I'm gonna try to get through it as quickly as possible. There isn't a whole lot to say here, just look out for jellyfish and pufferfish and whatnot. One thing that is sort of interesting but also annoying are these bubbles. You need to use them to progress through the level, which is fine, but sometimes it's easier said than done. I never really thought of the controls being particularly bad as a kid, but as an adult it's a little more obvious that they're really not that tight. Sometimes you just fall off at things when you try jumping too close to the edge. But if you keep at it, you should eventually reach the surface and the boss. This time you gotta fight this dolphin jerk. It's basically the same fight as with the ghost on level 1, just switch sides to avoid the crabs and jump on him when he comes out of the water. Level 4 is the Abandoned Mines. It's probably the shortest level in the game. The only things really worth mentioning are probably the slime enemies and these boulders that Porky comedically tries to avoid by walking casually away from them. Oh, and the music on this level is Hall of the Mountain King, which is interesting. At the end of the level, you face off against a monstrous version of Tweety Bird. You just wait for him to fly out of the barrel and then jump on him. Probably the easiest boss, which for this game is actually pretty impressive. Level 5 is the Alps, and one of the weirdest levels in the game. That reminds me of the Monty Python foot. So yeah, at first it seems simple enough, snowman enemies and piranha jumping out of fishing holes, but then you see this. Like, damn, look at that spike. Is that not the most badass video game spike you've ever seen? But it really starts getting weird once you exit the snow portion of the level and enter... I'm not even really sure what to call it. There's chicken legs and dice, eyeballs, and carrots as platforms. The background has all kinds of weird crap going on. Oh, you know those platforms that you stand on and then Daffy will come out and scare you? Yeah, instead it's a horse head now. I remember always getting lost in this level as a kid, having no idea where to go, and often turning the game off after a while. But there's only one more level after this, so I'll keep going on. So if you manage to make it to the end of this level, you have to face off against the Abominable Snowman. Once again, the boss fight is pretty easy. So finally we've made it to the final level, the castle. Nice opening, it really sets the atmosphere. Except, what's that? A noose? Jeez man, this game is a lot darker than I remember. The outside of the castle is pretty simple, nothing that you haven't seen before. The inside is a little more complicated though. There's a lot of medieval style obstacles that you have to avoid. Oh, and these rocket things, I hate these enemies, probably my least favorite in the game. They always swoop down in just the right way to hit you. And you know how I said the hitbox was generous before? Well, not here. I'm not sure what they did, but I swear it's harder than usual to jump on these enemies without getting hurt. Some of the sections in the castle seem to just be a pool area, guarded by robots of course. Normally I'd be confused, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised at this point. So if you manage to make it to the top of the castle, you get to battle the final boss of the game. A robot? Well, a robot controlled by Daffy Duck, or Count Duckula, or who knows. In this fight, you just have to jump onto Daffy to stop him from using the controls, then you jump on the robot. It's a pretty simple last boss fight, like all the other ones in the game. A little bit of a letdown. Well, at least at the end, Porky finally wakes up from his nightmare. I think? I don't know. What's going on? So yeah, it's your average platformer. As a kid, I used to play it all the time, but as an adult, it's a short, mediocre experience. One thing I should mention though is that the game had a built-in weather system type thing. Every time you put the cartridge in, each level would have an alternate background. This is a really cool feature that I can't recall being in any other SNES game I owned as a kid. I wonder what other games might have it. Okay, so Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday. It's okay. It's okay. As a kid, I remember playing this a lot, but it's just okay. The controls are decent, but sticky sometimes. The game itself is very short. You could probably beat it in about an hour on your first try. But it does have very impressive animation for Super Nintendo. It's really nice to look at. So there's that. You know, I'm still curious about who sent this to me in the first place. Maybe the box has something. from GK. Gary Kitchen.